Welcome back. We're back with round 2 of the Galpin Energy. This one is about HRV fundamentals, stress mechanics, carbs at night, and why movement beats hype. Also red light, VO2 max, and the you can still get stronger at 80 debate. The night carbs thing was wild, like one lever flips the whole chart. I can't tell if it's genius or just extremely context-dependent. He's basically saying, check symptoms, then blood markers, then the clue. And the clue here was insulin being low, which pushed SHBG high, testosterone down. SHBG the villain, insulin the side character. Classic plot. But the punchline was the fix. Carbs back in at night and sleep and testosterone up. The part I liked is he didn't say keto is bad, just it didn't work there. Because people treat diets like personality traits, not variables. Like I'm keto is your entire nutritional identity. His whole stance is, observe HRV, sleep, respiratory rate, performance, then infer. Wait, he said respiratory rate and sleep data are the starting line, right? Yeah, because HRV alone is associated like love languages, not the cause. And then he brings in that study. Faster breathing predicts stress odds, but HRV didn't. So HRV isn't a single truth machine, annoying but fair. That's when he goes full first principles, stress source and stress relief. He wants you to lower the non-specific stressors first, then improve resilience. I love that hidden stressors phrase, like your life is haunted by spreadsheets. Then he hits the practical fix, time with zero input, multiple mini decompressions. He's like 1 to 3 10-minute walks with nothing in your ears, just reset. And the way he said midday is awful for him because your brain screams wasting time. Midday decompress is basically an ego tax. That whole conversation made me think we've outsourced calm to entertainment. And the trap is you never create a physiological done signal, so you stay wired. He even needed a ritual at night, dogs, nature walk, like a shutdown command. I do wonder, though, if your job is high arousal, do you even have off time? But that's the point. He's building micro-off states, not waiting for a perfect day. Then he drops red light therapy and admits he missed the boat earlier. That honesty landed because people pretend they knew everything instantly. He argues it penetrates skin at 640 and 850 nanomonomers and triggers cascades inside tissue. The way he said, bring it all on if you're on a 60 milliliter contract. I'm with him on this. It's not magic. It's another lever that might move recovery. Still, I want to see how much of HRV changes a red light versus better training timing. He basically preempted that by talking about training load patterns too. Like if your day is already sympathetic heavy, then HIIT training can dig the hole deeper. That section was the cleanest explanation of trade-offs I've heard in a while. Then the muscle goal question, can I gain muscle and stay lean? He basically says yes, but you can't do 15 pounds muscle and 0 fat, sadly. The realistic expectations, maybe 7 to 8 pounds muscle, 1 pound fat, if you start leanish. And the strategy is close to a slight surplus, not some extreme calorie carnival. Don't go to 6,000 calories feels like parenting, but for metabolism. He emphasizes protein around 2 grams per kilo or higher, then adjust calories calmly. Protein timing doesn't matter much for muscle gain, but carbs timing matters for recovery. Which is such a specific contradiction to the gym lore that refuses to die. And then he transitions to aging. Move well, don't get hurt, and train for falls risk. The VO2 max and leg strength mortality point was heavy but important. That line of independence around VO2 max 18 for men, 15-16 for women, whoa. He framed it as everyday tasks consuming most oxygen, so your whole system becomes stressed. And the spiral? Weaker legs lead to less activity, which leads to more weakness. Atrophy leads to atrophy. Sounds like a villain with good branding. Then the hope. Training plasticity doesn't disappear. 80-year-olds can still improve strength. For VO2 max training, he's basically like, keep heart rate up for 20 to 60 minutes, plus shorter hard bursts. You don't need to be a lab rat, is the vibe. He also hates hyper-specific repetition forever because overuse risk climbs. So it's variation plus progressive overload, 10% week to weekish, then monitor. And he suggested the 50 workouts completed plan instead of rigid weekly schedules. I do like that, but I worry people will procrastinate and then crash when life hits. He basically said life will hit, build buffer by starting now and staying consistent. Then we hit creatine and the "it's for bodybuilders" myth. He called Examine.com the unbiased starting point, which feels rare in supplement discourse. Creatine as a fuel for fast ATP, 3 fuel sources, and it has a strong safety profile. Not a hormone, not a mineral, more like a nutrient. Stop calling it steroid adjacent. Finally, fat loss. Stop obsessing over burn fat with cardio and focus on adherence. His main claim was, adherence is the #1 predictor of long-term success. Yo-yo dieting as a review paper flex, he's not messing around. And the 2 assumptions baked in: lose fat while preserving muscle and keep it off long-term. Which leads to the practical system. Enough protein, strength training at least once weekly, then add cardio you can stick to. I like that he pushes back on scarcity psychology too. Diets don't work as often people quit. And then the futuristic close. Digital twin, sensors, blood work, simulations, less guessing. But he's careful. Even with tech, you still need the work and the ethics are huge. Which is the perfect end note. Tools help, but humans still run the machine. That's episode 2 done. What a ride, and honestly a lot to apply immediately. Thanks for sticking with us through this series. Go build your buffer, train your basics. We'll catch you next time. Same energy, better sleep, higher consistency. Welcome back, and yeah, this final one ties HRV, stress, night carbs, and longevity training together. We covered why recovery isn't just sleep, plus how red light and smarter training stacks change outcomes. The biggest thing that hit me, you can't coach blood markers, you need the clues they give. Like he basically treats lab work as detective work, not a prescription pad. And I love that he hates the idea of one-size-fits-all solutions like keto fixes everything. Because he's like, it worked for someone, but then it didn't work for you. Here's why. The night carb section was wild. Carbs back, insulin rises, sleep and testosterone markers improve. Not carbs are magic, but carbs solve a low insulin clue in this person. He mentioned sex hormone binding globulin going up when insulin's low and free testosterone dropping. That's the kind of mechanistic chain that makes HRV feel less mysterious. Still, I had the same thought. How often is this actually the bottleneck versus random stress variables? He kept saying, the goal is to find the place you can intervene with the biggest bang for buck. And he basically said HRV fundamentals start with sleep data and respiratory rate. That respiratory rate predicts stress outcomes vibe, but HRV not always tracking it, that's interesting. It's like, related but not the same. Stop worshiping one metric like it's God. I'm glad he split sleep and recovery because people confuse the two constantly. His framing was, you can sleep fine but still have stressed physiology that doesn't recover properly. Then the stress equation, stressors in, stress relief out, was clean first principles thinking. Also his point about modern life arousal being way higher than historical baseline, that's painfully real. He argued for intentional sensory off time, like 10 minutes without input, and I was ready to disagree. But then he made it sound simple. Walk outside, close your eyes if you want, just stop feeding the brain. My pushback, though, can 10 minutes really move HRV in a meaningful way? His answer wasn't 10 minutes fixes everything, it was, it lowers the load you're carrying. That's the real math. If you reduce non-specific stressors, your bucket gets smaller and adaptation becomes easier. I also loved the realism. He's like, midday decompression is torture for me. Same though. He basically treats the day like a schedule of arousal states, not just work and then gym. Then we pivoted to red light therapy and I was the villain in my own head. Like, he's hyping lasers again. But he changed his tune, and the wavelengths penetrating tissue thing actually has a coherent story. He cited 640 mRs and 800 TNATM as examples and talked about cascades, skin health, and recovery. I still want people to remember, evidence doesn't mean mandatory, it means worth testing if it fits. And I liked the not a must-have unless vibe. He framed it like a lever, not a religion. Then training time. High sympathetic drive plus demanding job can bury you for HRV. Translation. Don't stack stress stacking devices and then act shocked your nervous system is cooked. After that, he dropped the muscle and lean goal question, and his answer was basically expectations plus math. You can gain some muscle and lose a bit of fat. But 15 pounds muscle and 0 fat? Not without special circumstances. I appreciate that he set close to goals, like 5 kilos total with maybe 4.5 muscle and 1 fat. And the surplus logic was reasonable, like 10% rather than going full gluttony for mass. Protein target, around 2 grams per kilo or higher, and then calories adjusted with that protein anchor. The best part, protein timing doesn't matter much for muscle growth, but carb timing can help recovery. And he basically shrugged at you must eat immediately after workout, because the bigger game is consistency. He went into intermittent fasting too. No major fat loss advantage if calories and protein are matched. So the message is, fasting is a tool, not a personality trait. Then the average Joe training recipe, move well, don't get hurt, and build power for fall prevention. The fall's risk logic was intense. Leg strength and VO2 max as predictors of survival and independence. He even framed it like line of independence for VO2 max, then tied it to HRV, sleep, stress hormones, and behavior spirals. Which is why he kept saying, don't wait until you're old. Buffer matters, because life interruptions happen. That part felt like the most practical life advice in the episode. And he made it a controllables game, work on what you can now so you're not flat when life hits. The way he described training for survival stats was oddly motivating, not scary. Still, I had to sanity check the VO2 max claims, but the direction is clear. Build cardiovascular capacity and strength. Then he connected it to VO2 protocols. 20 to 60 minutes to keep the heart challenged, plus some short hard intervals. And the specificity lesson, just get your heart rate up consistently, not perfect protocols in your garage forever. That whole variation versus specificity thing for gym progress was actually useful for me. Progressive overload, but no obsession with doing the exact same thing forever. Protect joints, keep stimulus. He suggested planning like 50 workouts ahead instead of micromanaging week-to-week microcycles. My favorite style, finish the work, not get crushed by the calendar. And then, supplements. He used creatine as an example of fighting the stereotype that it's only for bodybuilders. He basically sold creatine as a nutrient fuel with strong risk profile and evidence across ages and contexts. Magnitude of effect like 312%. That's not influencer magic, that's realistic expectations. Finally, the fat loss real math. Fat loss equals adherence first, then nutrition and training systems. The you don't fail because you picked the wrong exercise thesis is so refreshing. He was ruthless about yo-yo dieting and scarcity thinking. Most people don't quit because they're uninformed. They quit because this plan is unsustainable, so diet dies, not body fat. Then he wrapped the series vibe with tech, digital twins, blood work, sleep, movement sensors, simulations. But he also said it bluntly, AI won't replace the work and ethics matter hugely. Which honestly is the perfect theme. Tools help, humans still run the machine. All right, that's episode 2. If you take one thing, build buffers, nail the basics, and make it doable. Thanks for sticking with us through this series. Go build your recovery stack and train consistently. We'll catch you next time. Same energy, better sleep, higher consistency. Welcome back. This episode connected HRV recovery, carbs at night, and the real health math. We also went into red light therapy, training variation, and why supplements are judged by evidence. Okay, can we start with the night carb thing, because that sounded almost too convenient. Like, add 50 grams and suddenly testosterone and sleep are fixed? Come on. But the model wasn't magic, right? It was blood markers, insulin, and SHBG links. Yeah, the inverse relationship was the clue. When insulin is low, SHBG can creep up. And then free testosterone goes down, so people feel like low testosterone humans. That's such a brutal way to phrase it. Sex hormone binding globulin ruining your vibe. So the point is, keto can work, but sometimes carbs at night are the missing lever. Exactly. He kept saying it's scenario dependent, not ideology dependent. I love the tone where he's like, I'm not against ketosis, it just didn't work for you. Still, I'm wondering, why specifically nighttime carbs for sleep and serotonin? He brought serotonin and sleep onset correlation into it, plus meta-analyses supporting timing effects. But he also said protein timing doesn't matter much for muscle growth, right? Which is hilarious because half the internet treats whey like a sacred ritual at 9:03 a.m. That's so true, like you miss the shaker and you lose the next 10 years. Then HRV fundamentals kicked in, start with respiratory rate and sleep data, not random hacks. Wait, he basically said HRV league table? Cool. What do you see in objective sleep? Yeah, he wants first principles. What causes stress and what causes stress relief? And he pushed back on thinking sleep and recovery are the same thing. Recovery is a separate checkbox, like sleep fulfilled but HRV still mad at you. That disassociation example, respiratory rate mapping to stress likelihood but not always HRV, felt important. Because it screams associated doesn't mean identical, even if your dashboard overlaps. Honestly, Whoop people are going to love that line, then argue in comments forever. The non-specific stressors part was a vibe too, relationship, environment, hidden inputs. And then if those are fixed, adjust stress resilience. Decompression time is the lever. But does walking without input really move the needle, or is it just rest your brain therapy? The way he described it was sensory input removal and intentional arousal drop, physiological signal hunting. I also like that he admitted he can't just meditate for an hour. He needs his walk outside thing. It's torture for me is the most relatable medical quote I've heard in months. Then red light therapy came in. He changed his stance, which is rare and refreshing. He made it sound less like woo and more like wavelength physics, 640 and 850-ish penetration. And the key claim was, it crosses skin and activates cascades related to recovery and endocrine balance. I'm always wary of impressiveness, but he was careful. Not everyone needs it. Basically, if you're broke, don't panic buy panels like it's a subscription service. Then training timing and HRV again. Break down training type and time of day, low intensity versus high intensity. If your job is already sympathetic, piling intense training can keep you in the hole. That links to his "can I gain muscle and stay lean" question. He basically said yes, but expectations matter. He was like, you can't do 15 pounds muscle and 0 fat unless you cheat with hormones. Unless you're on exogenous testosterone, the honesty just hit. But he grounded it. Small surplus, high protein, and realistic outcomes like muscle gain with minimal fat. And he said timing of protein doesn't matter much, but carbs timing can matter for recovery. I respect the nuance, but I still think people cling to meal timing myths like it's religion. His fat loss segment was basically, stop over-focusing on one exercise mode and optimize adherence. The meta rule, yo-yo dieting is a system failure, not a willpower failure. He said the top predictor is long-term adherence to nutrition and training, not the best protocol. That, if you hate running, you don't need to run part felt like permission to breathe. Because the internet loves cardio shame, like if you didn't suffer in zone 5, you didn't try. Then he laid out fundamentals, protein high, strength at least weekly, and a cardio component that's doable. And the scarcity trap, people create scarcity and then consistency dies. Scarcity mindset. I can't do the fun thing. Then your diet collapses at the first social invite. I also liked his variation versus specificity take for training progression and injury risk. The 10% weekly overload idea, simple, but you can't brute force it without monitoring. For aging, he went hard on leg strength and VO2 max as mortality predictors, pretty sobering math. That line of independence around VO2 max dropping below 118 for men is terrifying. But the empowerment angle was, training can blunt decline, even if you're not young anymore. Then the VO2 max training basics, continuous work plus shorter hard intervals, no over-engineering. Get your heart rate up is the most annoyingly effective sentence ever. Also, supplements, creatine, he handled it like a scientist, not like a gym influencer. Evidence profile, effect size, risk profile, and it's not a hormone or mineral imbalance game. I love how he reframed creatine as a fuel source and reminded people it's not steroids by association. And he even connected supplements to broader brain and nervous system fuel considerations. Still, I'm not trusting bone health magic. I want the measured claims and dosage context. Exactly. He kept it in ranges like 3-12% strength-type effects, not miracles. The last big theme was digital twins, assessment, Polaris, intervention, and the human coach role. AI can predict, but it can't replace the fact that people need guidance under uncertainty. And ethics, databases of healthy people, and what great even means. He didn't gloss over that. Which is why I'm taking away the whole episode in one line. Measure clues, then build a sustainable system. All right, that's it. Episode 2 wrapped. Night carbs when the markers say so, red light as an optional lever, and HRV as a map. Thanks for sticking with this series. Go build buffers, keep the basics boring, and train like consistency is the cheat code. Welcome back. This episode connected HRV, night carbs, red light, and the doable training math. We basically hunted for practical levers, sleep recovery clues, carbs as a marker-driven tool, and training buffers. The HRV part was my favorite because it's not vibes, it's systems thinking. But I'm still hung up on one thing. Are people overreading HRV as truth? HRV is like a smoke alarm, not the fire. And he kept saying, look for clues, don't treat markers blindly. That insulin SHBG-free testosterone chain was wild, though. Low insulin leading to higher SHBG and then lower free testosterone. What a cascade. And then he says sometimes the fix is literally carbs at night. Okay, but not carbs because carbs, right? Carbs because markers suggest it. Exactly, and the sleep serotonin linkage gave it some biological plausibility. He even said ketone life can still work, just not this person, this problem. That's what I wish more fitness people understood. Context changes everything. One ketogenic person wins, another crashes, and suddenly everyone loses their mind. I also liked how he separated sleep from recovery. Like you can sleep 8 hours but still have physiologic non-recovery. Sleep is a box you check. Recovery is the stuff that happens inside. And he went hard on fundamentals, respiratory rate, sleep data, then stress sources. Respiratory rate as a stress signal always feels underrated. But then he drops that study. Breath rate can correlate with stress without HRV moving. Translation, correlated doesn't mean interchangeable. That's why the HRV league table approach can be dangerous. Because if your buddy's number is up, you start thinking your lifestyle is math. Realistically, you need the map plus the route, not just the speedometer. Moving into red light, he admitted he missed the boat and then flipped his stance. I still want people to understand what it is. Wavelengths crossing skin and hitting tissue. He mentioned around 640 and 850 nanometers activate cascades, not magic. My brain likes that framing, optional lever, not religious experience. He positioned it with injury recovery and endocrine shifts, but stayed away from miracle claims. And then he connected HRV improvement to training variables, timing and intensity mix. This is where most people mess up. High sympathetic drive all day, then hard training anyway. They're basically running a laptop with 20 tabs open and calling it discipline. The red thread for me was the stress bucket idea. Lower the non-specific stressors first, then modify how you handle stress. That also explains why more exercise isn't always the answer. Sometimes the answer is 10 minutes with no inputs and your nervous system goes, finally. I loved that he described his own torture midday. Interruptions never end. It's funny how his approach was, walk outside, not complicated breath gimmicks. Yet some people will say, no, only breath work is legit. He didn't really care about the ritual. He cared about sensory input removal. And that ties into HRV being connected but not identical to sleep quality. Then we jumped into training and aging, VO2 max, leg strength, and the line of independence. The hazard ratio framing made it feel real. Leg strength and VO2 max out predict some classic risks. That 15-16 for women, 18 for men independence threshold stuck with me. It's not live forever, it's don't become trapped inside your body. And the core message was, you don't wait until old age to start. Trainability stays high, even in your 70s and 80s, massively encouraging. But I'm still thinking about the practical math, buffer versus optimism. He basically said maximize your baseline so life events don't push you off a cliff. Like an injury, a busy month, or a gym shutdown shouldn't delete your health plan. That 50 workouts planned, not day-by-day microcycles, was a clever system. It's progressive overload with flexibility, variation without chaos. Because doing the same exact workout forever is how people get bored or injured. Or both, in the most predictable human way possible. Then we landed on the fat loss real math. Adherence beats perfection forever. The stop overrating cardio-only fat loss take is always going to annoy runners. But the point isn't never run, it's calorie deficit with muscle preservation. Protein adequacy, at least one strength training day, and sustainable adherence, done. He even attacked generic genetic testing because of lack of validation across ethnic backgrounds. That's a big deal. Personalization that doesn't transfer is just marketing with numbers. And then he went future mode with the human digital twin, data fusion and simulations. I'm into it, but I love that he said technology won't replace the work. The machine can't take your dumbbells away from you. Also, the ethics. Databases of healthy people, what great means, and where we draw lines. Polaris was a funny word choice for a terrifying problem. No North Star metric. He basically said we know deficiency and disease, but not great in a universal way. That loops back to the episode thesis. Measure clues, then build a system you can sustain. So if you're listening, night carbs only when your markers suggest it. Red light as an optional lever, and train for buffers. HRV isn't a score, it's a map. Use it to find the stressor and the relief lever. All right, last thing, don't try to optimize your entire life tomorrow. Make one boring change that increases your odds. Protein, consistency, and recovery inputs. That's a wrap on the series. Thanks for riding with us, and go build buffers, keep it simple, and train like consistency wins. Welcome back. This episode was basically HRV detective work, plus night carbs, red light, and buffers. We ended on the real math: adherence, training variability, and not guessing your way to health. The HRV part is what keeps sticking in my head. Everyone treats it like a single scoreboard. But he kept saying, it's a map, and that changes how you react to the number. I love that he basically roasted people for level 1 practices and then hunting clues. Because if you don't look for the stressor, you're just poking random levers, right? And the respiratory rate or sleep, HRV thing, those being linked but independent, was a big nuance. Like one breath rate increase didn't show up in HRV or sleep markers in that college data, which is wild. That's basically the universe saying, stop worshiping one metric. Then the night carbs section. Bro, that was such a practical test the hypothesis vibe. He wasn't selling carbs as magic, he was saying low carbs can push SHBG up and testosterone down in some people. And the serotonin or sleep onset correlation piece, he used it as a bridge, not as proof beyond context. Also, he was like, ketone people can sleep great, which is the most reasonable way to argue. The best line for me was, if it doesn't work for you, ask what's different. Don't double down blindly. So when he talks about blood markers as clues, not targets, that's exactly how coaching should feel. Not chase this perfect lab, but use this to decide what experiment to run next. And the experiment was often boring. Add like 50 grams of carbs at night and watch insulin, sleep, and testosterone improve. But I also liked the caution. He said not right before bed sometimes, and total daily carbs still matter. That's the part people screw up. They treat it like a cheat code and ignore the rest of the day. Then red light therapy. He did the rare thing where the expert admits he missed the boat. I respect that more than anyone insisting they were right from day one about every trend. The mechanism talk was interesting too. Wavelengths around 640 and 850 crossing skin and activating cascades. But his stance was sane. It's an optional lever, not a must-buy religion. Because HRV improvements probably come from training stress management too, not just one gadget. Which is why he pivoted to training time and intensity. Sympathetic drive all day, then high-intensity training. That's the trap. Basically, if you're already living at level 10, don't schedule more level 10 workouts. And that connects to buffers again. He kept returning to risk management for health. The whole buffer metaphor was everywhere. Train enough that small disruptions don't drop you off the cliff. I felt attacked when he said you have kids, work, life happens, and you can't miss chunks. Then he got into the aging math, VO2 max, leg strength, and line of independence. I'm not gonna lie, the hazard ratio comparisons made everything feel blunt and urgent. He made leg strength sound like the most underrated cheat code in human longevity. And the spiral model, atrophy leading to less activity leading to more atrophy, yeah, that's the downward rocket equation. He also pushed training as still highly possible even at 70+, which is the opposite of fatalism. I liked the VO2 Max prescription simplicity. Challenge heart rate with longer, steady work plus some shorter hard work. No need to become a lab rat with exact protocols, just impose demand consistently. But he did add the variation versus specificity balance, which prevents the do the same thing forever problem. The 10% overload rule and doing a 50 workout planned sequence, that's system design for training. It's like he's building you a training product roadmap instead of giving vibes. And then the fat loss conversation. Finally, someone said adherence is the #1 predictor. He basically rejected the idea that burning fat via HIIT run is the whole strategy. The frame was lose fat, preserve muscle, and make it sustainable enough that you don't yo-yo. Yo-yo dieting isn't a personal failure, it's a system failure you keep repeating. I also appreciated the dismissal of genetic testing for nutrition when it isn't validated across populations. That argument about variance dropping to 0 across ethnic backgrounds is the kind of detail people ignore. And he brought it home with personalization. What's your pain point? Cravings, hunger, energy, and build the approach around that. Then he lined up the non-negotiables. High protein, at least 1 strength session a week, and cardio that you'll actually do. Don't zone 6 to I don't care made me laugh because it's basically permission to be human. After all the optimization talk, he still said you can lose weight without running if you hate it. That's the whole philosophy. Optimize for adherence first, then optimize details second. And the last big arc, the digital twin and AI, was interesting but not scary techno-fantasy. He basically said technology may reduce guessing, but you still need the human work and the ethics lag will matter. You still have to do all the work, was the punchline for me. Overall, the episode feels like one thesis. Measure clues, build systems you can sustain, and don't chase perfect one-number health. All right, last thing, if you're listening. Night carbs only when your markers suggest it, red light as an optional lever, and train for buffers. HRV isn't a score, it's a map. Use it to find the stressor and the relief lever. All right, last thing, don't try to optimize your entire life tomorrow. Make one boring change that increases your odds. Protein, consistency, and recovery inputs. That's a wrap on the series. Thanks for riding with us, and go build buffers. Keep it simple, and train like consistency wins.